Today we will learn how to create virtual machines on Azure. We will create two virtual machines using Ubuntu Server image. The virtual machine should meet the service agreement of 99.99% and it should also use the managed disks. So for this, let's first log into the portal. Then click on Create Resources. You will see Ubuntu Server here. Click on Ubuntu. If not, you can also search Ubuntu here. Click on Create. If you want to change the image, you can select any other image. So I'll go with default here. Now select a resource group. If resource group is not available, you can click on Create New and create a new resource group. I already have a resource group, so I'll use this resource group. Provide a name for the virtual machine. Select the region where you want to create the virtual machine. I will create this virtual machine in West US. And availability option. So one of the requirement for this is to provide a service level agreement of 99.9995% availability. So for this, we need to have an availability group. To create this, we will create an availability set, and this availability set, if there is already an availability set, then we can use that. If not, we can create a new one. Provide a name for the availability set. So fault domain, I'll go with 2. The maximum you can have fault domain as 3, but I will use fault domain as 2. Update domain 5. So combination of fault domain and update domain will give you the 99.95% availability. So I'll select this, click OK. And then you can also select the size of VM here. If you want a different size, is a default standard DS2 VM which has got 2 vCPUs and 8 gig memory. But if you want, there are other options available to choose from. I will just leave it as it is and go with the default. You have options to create either SSH key or password. So for now, for this exercise, I'll go with password, my username and password. Now, if this server needs any port to be exposed, you can select from here. For example, if you want to SSH from your local machine, you can create SSH. You can open the SSH port here. If not, you can just leave it, and also you can configure it later. For now, I will leave it as it is and then configure the ports as needed. Next, I need to choose the disk. So in the requirement, it says that I need to use the managed disk. So here I'll go and choose premium SSD, which is default, and then click on advanced and choose manage disk here. So in this case, the managed disk is already selected, so I'll leave it as it is. You also need to create a network, but in this case I don't need to worry about networking. I'll just go with the default options of network, and then if you want to configure any other parameters here, you can choose it. But for now, because the requirement does not ask to configure us anything else, I'll just leave as it is. We have achieved the 99.95% availability as well as the managed disk. So I will leave everything as default and just go ahead and create it. So when you click on create button, the review and create button, it will actually go through all the validations and see all the required fields are available, and it complies with the policy of the resource group. And then finally click on the create button. The VM is now getting created. You can see that deployment is in progress, and we can come back and see this. In the meantime, we'll go back and create another virtual machine. I will select this Ubuntu server, use the same resource group where I created the other one, give it a name, choose a region. Previously I used US West, and then the availability option, availability set. If you remember, we created an availability set, so I'm going to use the same availability set. Everything remains the same. We have to configure the password, username, we need to use manage disk. We have manage disk selected as yes. Networking. So in this case, it is using the network that was already created, so we will just use the same network. Subnet, I'll leave it as default subnet, which was also created earlier. And public IP, in case we have to use public IP, so there will be a public IP assigned to this VM. Basically, at this point of time, since we already created one VM, we will leave everything as default and then review the creation of virtual machine. We'll go through the same validation process here, and once the validation has passed, we can click on the create button to create the VM. Now both the VMs are getting created. You click on this bell icon and see what is the progress. So both of them are getting deployed as of now. So we will come back and see once the deployment has completed. Now you can see the VM deployment has been completed. So we will click on go to resource to go to the VM, or we can also go and click on the resource group and select the resource group where we created the VM. Then we can search the VM by name. You can see this virtual machine 1 and virtual machine 2, both of them got created. Once you go in here, you can see the virtual machine is running. It got started, and you can connect using this. If you're using SSH, you can connect using SSH, and if it is password protected, you can use the username and password to log in. This completes the creation of the VM.